That's the fourth part of the introduction to data visualization by using the Python videos or for this workshop. In the previous video that we saw that how to use the pandas and matplotlib for creating the bar charts and box plots. In this section we will see how to use the seaborn and the pandas data frame, which makes the visualization much more compact, more easier and understandable in comparison to the traditional way of visualization by using the matplotlib. If you click on the next page, you want to use the seaborn in this section combined with the pandas. And in comparison to the previous section that we used the COVID-19 dataset in the state of South Carolina and the breast cancer dataset, you want to use some of the generic available dataset in the seaborn. The first one is just the Titanic, which just shows the number of the survivors or number of deaths in the Titanic ship. So we want to create some similar bar charts that we have for the COVID-19 data set based on this generic data set available, so you don't need to load any file for this notebook here in this section. First, we'll just load that generic data set called the Titanic, but you can just use whatever data that you have in your file, or even use the previous panda breast cancer or COVID-19 data sets for the visualization. Then we want to use the categorized plot shown as the cat plot here, that just shows, because the seaborn create the bar charts based on the categories or different class that we have in the data set. So the x-axis is just the sex or the gender of the passengers as male or female, and the y-axis is the number of the survivors or just the percentage of the survivors, and the class just shows the class that passengers bought the ticket for the Titanic: first class, second, third, or fourth, the third class. And the kind of the chart that we want to create is just a bar chart. And finally, what's the data that we want to use for this visualization is the Titanic that we loaded here. So that's it. You don't need to define any figure or call the matplotlib for the visualization. If I come here, first you need to load all the modules as we saw in the previous sections. It just tries to connect to the Google Colab servers and then initialize the modules that we want to use for the visualization here. So we need to wait after that. So it seems just working now. And then define some style for the seaborn. And then load the Titanic, as we saw, Titanic dataset, and then create this bar chart here that just shows the percentage of the survivors in two different sex categories, and also based on different class of the tickets of the passengers for the first, second, or third class that they had. And the kind is just a bar chart, and the data is just, of course, you want to use the Titanic. So it just creates this bar chart more easily, more understandable in comparison to what we saw for the matplotlib. And in the second part, we could just create box plots or even other kinds of the categorized plots based on the fare that the passengers paid for their ticket, the percentage if they survived or if they did not survive. And then we want to categorize this bar chart into 3 different bar charts based on the class. And in comparison to the previous one, we saw that it's just a bar chart. We want to define the kind as the box plot, and then orient them in the horizontal orientation, and it just defines the aspect ratio and height, which doesn't really matter. You can just choose whatever value do you want for the height of the plot or its aspect ratio. And we want to make sure that all the fares are greater than 0. So make sure we just create a condition as the fare is greater than 0, and then have the excess scale as the log. So we would have the excess scale in the logarithmic scale, and then have this box plot here as well. You see that it's more understandable and easier to follow in comparison to what we saw for the matplotlib. So seaborn is a really powerful library that could be used for all kind of visualization and data analytics. We saw all the visualization in this section, and the other one is just a different type of box plot. For this one, again, we use another generic data set available in the seaborn to show how different functionality just work, but you can just replace this data set with your own data set, or even use the breast cancer or COVID-19 data sets for the visualization. So I'm going to the top. First, we load the tips data set into the tips data frame that we just choose for its name. And then again, the cat plot could be used for creating the box plots. We want to use this box plot for different days of the week, and then show the amount of tip that the waiter or waitress received, and categorize based on the sex or gender of the customers. And the kind of this box plot is called the violin because it just looks like the violin, but it's more useful even to see the shape of the distribution, because this violin shows you at which points you have more concentration of the, for example, the tips that you have. For example, for the Sunday, it just shows the amount of tip is concentrated around $4 here, because that's just the higher distribution in is for the female customers. But for the male customers, it's a little bit smaller, near the $3 for the tips at the Sunday. And we want to split them, of course, in different categories, and also the data that we use is called the tips. So that's much more easier for creating the box plot in comparison to the matplotlib that we saw in the previous section. That's the final visualization of this box plot, and you can just access the whole Google Colab notebook here in this link. So make sure you go through all the materials and see how you can just use even your data set or even the previous files that we have for the breast cancer or COVID-19 data set. Thank you so much.